Hello world, Jay here, and welcome to my channel. For those who do not know, I'm an artist. My main form of study right now is in oil painting. It is my love. I enjoy, of course, carving and sculpting, but right now my study is in oil painting and developing my dexterity in there. And I kind of wanted to have this channel to just share my experiences, a couple of gems that I've been handed that I would like to pass along. Gems were handed to me from really awesome people. And of course, I wanted to just take you along the creative process and just share the lessons that I'm learning and channeling into my artwork. So here we go. I've had an experience that was like a critical turning point for my life that I had to channel into some art, and I titled it The Fisherman. I think Pharrell in the song Lemon, he mentioned the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. And that's very accurate. In this particular experience, it was the truth that set me free, and the truth sets everyone free. But the one thing that necessarily pisses us off a lot is the conviction. Conviction is like the invisible force that's like tied to truth. It's always there. And it doesn't necessarily, it's not a harmful thing. You can't necessarily turn it off. It's just stirring up a lot of what the truth sheds light on. And the conviction was the big piece for me that definitely was a struggle. The Fisherman is a concept that speaks to the act of drawing out like deeply rooted traumas and negative behaviors and getting to the roots of that by stirring them up, stirring up your mind with conviction. And through that will begin the process of reshaping these harmful patterns and introducing new thought patterns and a new internal dialogue and healthier choices. And in addition to that is helping others who are dealing with the same challenges. What caused me to create the painting really was disobedience. I was being disobedient and running from guidance and running from my elders. And I had to take a path of, walk down this path of emotional suffering in order for me to develop the wisdom and the virtues and just develop the confidence within myself and face some truths about myself that has shaped my entire, it just kind of made a whole new life for me at this moment that I'm having right now. And I said, I have to share it. Let me just start in explaining exactly where I was being disobedient in. A lot of stuff happened in 2017. A lot of relationships ended. I began to really, after learning myself and learning things I told myself and learn my own self-sabotaging ways, I had to start to really like weed out certain things and weed out certain relationships. I was inviting in relationships and allowing relationships to kind of like go on because I was lying to myself about what I truly needed and what I truly wanted. And it wasn't right for that person or those people, and it wasn't right for myself. Disrespecting my own soul to a degree by not giving myself what I knew I deserved, and I didn't at the time feel as though I deserved the things that I deserved. So I kind of let these relationships just linger, and over time, just my disobedience in the process caused me emotional draining, stress, and different things like that. And then eventually I broke. But if only I just kind of took the time and got real with myself and said, you know what, I'm letting this relationship linger on for too long because I feel pity for this person, or I feel as though I can change the situation, or I should be a martyr, and just, so many different things that has caused me to really just kind of waste my time. But again, this was the path I decided to take when I disregarded the truth and disregarded what I knew I needed. And I know that I needed to separate myself from that, but I just let it go on, Not cool. I even knew the warning signs before other people was giving me guidance and telling me this is not a good idea. I'm not necessarily built for those type of relationships. No one really should be, to be honest. And they were cycles because this has been happening for years. I want to say as early as elementary school. It's been that deep. I was able, of course, to salvage, a lot of gems from these experiences, but it did form a toll. And I was bitter, resentful, and struggling with forgiveness. And that pretty much was the energy behind the painting. And the painting was originally speaking on just me kind of baiting a particular behavior to surface just to show that person that this is what they're struggling with. And then I recognized that I had to, change that narrative. And sometimes our arrogance or our narcissism will dictate to us that we are the ones that's going to fix them, or we are the ones that's going to change them, and that's not what it's going to be all the time. They have to make a decision to want to be better for themselves, and it's nothing that you can do or put over them or give them any ultimatums to assist or facilitate their change. I didn't want to have something like that hanging in my house. And that would only just kind of remind me of the pain more so versus really addressing myself and addressing something that would be actually emotionally cleansing and healing for me, instead of just kind of like an arrogance thing. And I just didn't want that looming in my home. I didn't want to fuel all my emotion into something like that, giving it that much power to not necessarily be of use. And it all boiled down to just some things that were established in my childhood and why I never really addressed them and how that affected my decision making and why I was in such a fearful state. It was a lot of fear that ran my decision making in relationships. And since getting rid of that and being able to really zero in on behaviors and how we all have our own particular traumas and issues that we're working through, that was how I was able to detach from a lot of the things that were taking place that were draining. We don't realize sometimes when you don't reconcile or really dig into the issues that you've experienced in your youth. A lot of us don't recognize that is running the ship, because sometimes we just we bury them, not realizing that they still have a life, they still have value. So I may have completely gotten over something that happened to me 20 years ago, but if I never really made peace with the emotions, and if I never really got through them and called them forth and dug them out from my mind and really just addressed them, then you can almost guarantee that you're spending a lot of your days just functioning with those things that trigger certain reactions, certain emotions from you. You're not even really conscious of what's going on. We're aware that we may have a problem sometimes. We're not aware sometimes of where it stems from. It's real. It's real in these streets. It is legitimately, it's no joke. You have to really spend the time and get the work done. The thing that a lot of us are unaware of even, or maybe we are aware of, is that we're born into dysfunction. And dysfunction pretty much it's an easy, very understandable language, because that's in the society which we were born in, and we were born as dysfunction. And we carry out dysfunctional behaviors. We may have dysfunctional family relationships and dysfunctional intimate relationships, dysfunctional relationships with our own self and how we treat ourselves. And this is all in a society. And it's a very easy language. So, of course, the idea of when you learn the truth about breaking away from these patterns, and you're faced with that truth, and then the conviction sets in, it starts to increase. A lot of us tend to run away from facilitating or implementing change and developing a greater or more beneficial plan for our lives, because the whole idea of making changes is it's frightening to the ego. It's frightening to imagine breaking away from family members and friends, and even your own thought forms that were just so heavily raised in this dysfunctional environment. And it can be very scary. But that's what runs the world, just the fear of change and these illusions and these fantasies that we create about, since I know better, and if I do better, I'm going to lose this, or I'm going to lose that, and I'm going to lose this. But you're gaining a lot in that decision, because you know better, and you know that the effects of making that positive change will add so much to your life. But the fear of what's familiar, the fear of losing what's familiar, of course, sometimes takes precedence. The symbolism of the beasts or these fish are connected to the very deep layers of the sea. You'll notice that a lot of them, they are unsightly. They don't look as attractive as the typical fish, because they're in the depths of the ocean and where there is no sunlight. and the pressure is so great, they don't look great. They eat different, and when you think about it, they grow in the dark. Imagine and liken these same things, these same sea creatures, to your fears that are grown and they are festering in the dark. When you pull them up to the light, would these fish or would these fears carry the same power that they did in the dark? Would they look the same, considering that they were birthed in this deep dark, and there's so much, there's gases and different things that are under there, there's deep pressure. As the pressure releases and as the sunlight comes, what would these things look like? This is the connection to the deep sea fish and the fears and the ugly things that we like to bury. The more you begin to identify, meaning the more you begin to draw up from your subconscious, the more you draw them to the surface, the more you're able to identify and call them a name. And that instantly makes it something that you have power over. And it can become your chariot if you so choose, or you could just throw it out, but I highly doubt that you would after acquiring such a feat like that. Sometimes we create fantasies, and because our fear is, and our ego is so reluctant to like go through that change, the ego is like, but what about if this happens, what about if that happens, and then you're like really struggling to make the changes, and that's no bueno. Sometimes we create even more of an obstacle out of really nothing. When you think about it, like it's nothing. You're really upset about nothing, what I mean by that is you're creating a probability of something that's really probably not going to happen. You're like making a whole different Tyler Perry play of an experience that you may not even experience. Write all your fears down. Think about the likelihood of them happening, and if it were to happen, how would you respond to that? And is it really likely that thing is going to happen the way that you imagine it to happen? You kind of miss out on enjoying the fullness of life. But these things, of course, these fears are there to help you, and when you address them, they really will help you to help others. It's really about helping and passing along the baton, so to speak. Sometimes we may receive another person's fears, another person's traumas, and this is what I did as a result of me not trusting my own gut and kind of just severing ties or setting boundaries. I was taking in things I never had challenges in certain areas. I was starting to receive issues in, and a degree they begin to hold you responsible for their issue, and that's a whole nother issue in itself. Don't focus too much on time when you're getting through this, because that's another thing. Sometimes when we learn the truth and the conviction comes, some of us begin to pressure ourselves to make the change, and that's the result of another form of internal dialogue that you have. Don't pressure yourself to kind of like, oh, I gotta fix this now, I gotta fix it tonight, yada 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 yada. And you have to be respectful of the process. You have to be respectful of the healing process, and just get through it. Don't try to don't try your hardest to save face and pretend like you got it under control. No, just sit with yourself and do the work. That's all. Like, it's all about the healing. All about the healing. Elders. Get with an elder. An elder is someone who's been there and done that, and they have the t-shirt to match. That can really point out your weaknesses and point out the areas of trauma, and even give you details on how the behaviors that span off of that trauma, what they look like, and they can really help you along the way. Get with an elder. Get with someone. They don't necessarily have to be older. They don't have to be on their deathbed. I'm talking about someone who's been there and they have the t-shirt to match, and they really are for your best interest. But get linked with one of them. And for those who struggle with forgiveness, that's another thing. You have to forgive yourself first. That's one of the biggest pieces that helped me. Forgiving yourself for making those decisions, whether it was lying to yourself or whatever you've done that has allowed harmful things into yourself. Sometimes we beat ourselves up over those things and we think that there's no coming back from. And no, there is. That's just, we learn. We live and we learn. And still at times I find myself having to what I would call the exercise of whenever those thoughts come, I have to just kind of push them out of my mind. And that's the best way really to combat those things. When you find yourself in a position where you're just being reminded of the things that you struggle with, and you develop the compassion and the empathy and the tolerance, a lot more patient with behaviors and things that reflect and manifest as a result of unresolved trauma. You will be surprised how far your obedience will take you. Your obedience will take you across the land. The more obedient that you are, I can guarantee you that you're going to have new virtues develop, or previous virtues will have be a bit more pronounced. They're going to be sharpened. You're going to have an increased sense of a lot of different things, different abilities and things, just by going with the flow and just going with that process, just kind of killing your old self. Not to mention, when you do that, when you are killing your old self, there's some things about you that's never going to return again, because you sacrificed that old part of yourself. You've actually said, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice and give this part of myself over to receive the new information. Like, I'm really going to make a change, and I'm going to change my whole entire perspective. I'm going to integrate a whole new mode of living and all that stuff. You're really sacrificing an older part of yourself. And there is merit and there's value in that dead person that you've now transmuted or turned into something of value for yourself. That's like a marker for you, and you're never going to go back to those old places again. It takes that leap of faith. It really does. That's all it really takes, is a leap of faith to say, you know what, although I feel like this, although my thoughts are saying this, my experiences have said this, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to leave my mind and I'm going to make this step. I promise you, when you do that shit, things are so different. Like, life is different. It's just different. Things are never going to be the same, you know. Trust me. Maybe the relationship area is what I needed to really get an idea of why I was behaving the way that I did. Maybe that was why I went through this. So it had some purpose, regardless of how it felt. It definitely had a purpose, but it was just more so that was the thing that I needed for me. That was the moment for me to recognize that, okay, you know, it's time to really do some work. You have a greater call. It's time to kind of drop old thought patterns and old thought forms, and it's time to really get into a place where you're covered in fire versus you're just kind of moseying on along. You know, it's time to really break away from that, and that's exactly what this was. It was the most profound and healing experience for me, and it's not done, you know, but I've gotten through a lot of my own self-sabotage. Not the only one. Other people have different triggers and different traumas and things that they're working through. Where some people are controlled and functioning with them. They're running the ship every day. Like, the demons are running the ship every day. You don't recognize that. Once you do that, once you spend that time and you're in something, in that experience, then you're able to really look at other people and you're like, okay, I have empathy for you. I understand. You know, I'm not going to be that. I'm not going to be so hypercritical of you. I'm not going to make it my business to criticize or to do all that extra stuff to you just because you have a particular character flaw or you have something that I really don't like. But if anything, you're just more sensitive to that, and you're understanding that we all have something very deep within our own oceans, and a lot of these things are already running the ship. A lot of these things are already kind of like, they're not the chariot right now. They're pulling their boats. They're pulling them all along or around the way. And that's how they cope. That demon is running the ship, you know. But there is so much power in recognizing these demons and recognizing them and then legitimately turning them into, it's like sacrificing them and turning them into chariots. There is nothing more helpful, and it's the process of transmutation. You're just making something better for yourself. It's exhilarating. And it's exhilarating once you free yourself from that. I promise you that. A lot of things will open up for you. Just the process of being obedient. You'll find yourself like receiving, you know, just all kinds of gifts. And you're like, well, damn, had I would have just gone through with this, I would have already been here. But again, everybody has their own path and their own story. You know, that's just the way that this thing goes. I know what it's like to struggle with challenges and struggle with developing my character, and that's not an easy process. It's not easy, and you may feel like you're just in a long, it's almost like a long winter. You have to remember to give yourself the credit too. And the more you make these little adjustments, the less that your demons are really running the ship, and the more they begin to turn into things of merit, and that can carry you to new places, that can carry you to places of helping someone else and being of service to another. You know, you go through these processes to develop your character and then to really help others get through these same challenges. That's what this is about. I don't care what nobody says. You know, some might say, well, this is just for me and for me only. No, you really should be kind of sharing and sharing the health and the wealth in the process. Like, really spend your time and do that. But yeah, quite an experience. And you know, you have support. You have me at least. At least I know what it's like to go through certain challenges like this, especially when it comes to procrastination. My goodness, that was quite a lesson for me. And I have so much empathy and so much compassion for those who are going through that, and that sense of the binding feeling that it feels like, you know, just to feel like you waking up and you're just like thinking about trying to fix it every day, and you're focusing on it so much every day, and you're like hard on yourself about the progress that you're making or failing to make that day. And then sometimes you're taking it out on people because you're really upset with yourself, and it's no joke. But again, I'm here, and I understand. Trust me, I do. And I will see you next time. Much peace, power, and profanity to you. Have a good one. Many thanks to Chief Yuya and Anu for the gems and the coursework and just the podcast, to Sari and Brandon and those who have really been in this particular experience, who share and know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm grateful. I just wanted to share my thanks to you.